seatbelts, fasten them on, and mandatory. Mandatory for the first time in the SCC because we are underway with Hikaru having the white pieces in the first game. Here we go.
Here we go, indeed. E4, E5, and I mean, thinking back to the very first time they played, they didn't even have 5+1, Daniel. They were playing 5+2.
Back in the day when we had the telegrams and we had the phonograms and Thomas Edison was still alive. But we still had the Rui Lopez, and they literally did, because this opening has been around since the 1500s. That is when Rui Lopez de Segura, a Spanish priest, published his treatise on chess openings and recommended this opening for the first time. And we see the D3 variation as we so commonly do these days.
Yeah, I feel like, white is always on the lookout for something that doesn't just, completely simplify into these martial type of lines with D5, pawn sacrifices. The players are so well prepared that, they can do these things and just liquidate and simplify to a draw.
And that is part of the reason Rook E1 is played, to discourage the move D5, which could be played anyway. The other reason, Amon, is this classic Rui Lopez maneuver where the knight comes out to D2 and then drops back to F1 and settles on G3, kind of massing the forces on the king side, because the king side is ultimately where white wants to butter his bread.
That's right. That's such a classic maneuver, and if anyone is, onlooking and being like, I don't understand anything about these E45 positions, I see them in every top level match, well, you just highlighted such a great maneuver to just be aware of. The knight comes to G3, and then I think the thing that bothers players the most is bishop G4. It's a pin on the knight, it looks hard to break, but with the knight on G3, you can just play H3 and kick it away.
Indeed. And we see Carlsen expanding on the queen side, C7, C5. All of this is standard fare. This is what I would call a Chigorin pawn structure. The Chigorin variation itself, it refers to a main line where white has a pawn on D4. But it's important to think not only in terms of moves, but also in terms of the general pawn structure. And you're pointing it out, Amon, white could actually strike with D4, especially if black's light squared bishop lands on E6, which it just did.
And there you go. It definitely lends itself to the move D4. There are other prep moves that you could throw in, like, for example, completing that maneuver knight G3. H3 is always a decent move as well, and white often has that choice. Do you want to play the move A4 and just pry open that A file? Because if you trade the rooks on A8, it could be a timely moment to bring that queen away from the center. pawn is loose, well, b5 is hanging, so it actually really invites queen takes, but actually he's going to beat it with rook a3.
Okay, queen has to drop back, and then b5 is lost, and he's going for it.
Now, this looks like a really weird line here. Rook a3 looks, gotta go for it.
19 seconds for Nakamura as he restores material equality. Now Magnus struggles with weak pawns on the queen side, but he's grabbed another pawn on e4. He has eliminated the linchpin of Hikaru's central pressure. Rook a4, the immediate response, laterally hitting the knight. And that knight, is it going to drop back to f6? You can go back to d6, I think, tactically, but I'm expecting either knight f6 or even some sort of crazy knight d4 move using tactics to establish that knight in the center.
Now, Magnus is a professional. He knows that Hikaru has 20 seconds. He might look for a really complicated way to proceed.
Magnus pausing. This is a critical moment. Where does he put his knight? Even knight d2 is on the menu. Amon trying to shuttle that knight around to b3 so that it can supervise the weak queenside pawns. Magnus now below a minute. He's got to keep an eye on his own clock because this minute evaporates so quickly. And knight d4 is on the board. He's found it. The best move.
And I don't even have to assign a brilliancy to that one because it popped up for us. Takes, and the queen is hitting the knight on f5. The knights are a little bit clumsy when they're defending one another because they can't move.
But a very calm response by Hikaru. He comes to terms with the fact that he's going to lose back the knight, and instead, he helps himself to that a5 pawn. Magnus still has the initiative. The smoke clears a little bit, and look at how nicely Magnus' pieces are positioned all in the center. Queen f6 here would hit the f2 pawn. Magnus has to continue making threats, Amon, and complicating the game in Hikaru's time pressure, but how does he do that?
Yeah, it's really complicated, and Hikaru has done, I think, a phenomenal job. The patience to play queen takes a5 there when pieces were getting sacked is actually unbelievable, and he's so calm under pressure.
But the pressure continues. c4 by Magnus, opening up, popping open the diagonal for Black's dark squared bishop, but Hikaru gets his knife and fork ready. He might have forced the move c3, and if Magnus plays c3, I think this one is heading toward a draw. I think Hikaru has enough time to stabilize the game. Rook c2, perfect defensive play.
The only question, Danya, is can Hikaru do it without ever moving the c1 bishop?
Oh my gosh, and I think he's about to move it on the next move, so Magnus better offer a draw now.
Yeah.
And knight h3 there.
Wait, knight h3.
Knight h3. And Magnus forgot to play that move. It was still a draw after knight h3, but there would have been winning chances. And a draw agreed.